What would you do if everyone told you that something was worthless, but your gut screamed otherwise? In a galaxy where advanced alien civilizations have mastered faster-than-light travel for millennia, where energy shields can stop planet-killing weapons, and where AI networks span entire star systems, sometimes the most valuable treasures are the ones nobody else wants to touch. Marcus Chen, a human salvage dealer working the Outer Rim territories, is about to discover that the galaxy's biggest mistake might just be humanity's greatest opportunity. When a mysterious armored vessel appears at the Kepler station auction, with a starting bid so low it's practically an insult, every alien bidder walks away laughing. They're about to stop laughing very soon. What Marcus doesn't know yet is that he's just purchased the key to humanity's survival and the aliens' worst nightmare. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't the weapon itself, but who's crazy enough to figure out how to use it. The story begins with 7 credits, a desperate gamble, and one human's refusal to accept that something powerful could be worthless. But in a galaxy that has underestimated humanity before, Marcus is about to remind everyone why humans earn their place among the stars the hard way. Get ready for a journey that will take you from the grimy auction halls of frontier space to the highest levels of galactic politics, where one salvage dealer's lucky find becomes the catalyst for the biggest shift in galactic power since first contact. The auction hall reeked of desperation and cheap fuel fumes, exactly the kind of place Marcus Chen felt most at home. Kepler Station's salvage auction was held in what used to be a cargo bay before some entrepreneurial Vorthan decided to install uncomfortable metal benches and call it civilization. The lighting panels flickered intermittently, casting dancing shadows across the assembled crowd of species from across the outer rim. Marcus adjusted his worn leather jacket and checked the credit balance on his wrist display one more time. 7 credits and 43 cents. It wasn't much, but it was all he had left after paying for fuel, food, and the docking fees that seemed to increase every time he visited a civilized station. His salvage ship, the Rust Bucket, a name that was unfortunately accurate, sat in Bay 94, probably accumulating more fees by the hour. Around him, the usual suspects filled the benches. Kethvar scrap dealers with their forearms constantly gesturing as they calculated profit margins. A few Zentari merchants, their reptilian features betraying nothing as they evaluated each lot with cold mathematical precision. Some independent operators like himself, mostly human, mostly broke, mostly hoping to find something the big corporations had overlooked. The auctioneer, a bored-looking Mechron whose cybernetic implants covered half his face, gestured toward the viewing screen with one mechanical arm. Lot 47, his synthesized voice announced. Corvette-class vessel of unknown origin. Severe hull damage. Reactor offline. AI core reportedly corrupted. No manufacturer's marks or registry codes. Salvage rights only. Buyer assumes all liability. Marcus leaned forward in his seat, studying the image that appeared on the massive display. The ship was a mess, no doubt about that. Hull plating was scorched black in places, missing entirely in others. What looked like weapons damage had torn gaping holes along the port side. But underneath all that damage, Marcus could see something that made his salvage dealer instincts twitch. The basic hull configuration was wrong. Not wrong like damaged, wrong like it didn't match any known design in the galactic databases. The armor plating, where it remained intact, was thicker than anything he'd seen on a Corvette-class vessel, and those mounting points along the dorsal surface, those weren't for cargo containers or communication arrays. Those were weapons mounts, big ones. Starting bid is 50 credits, the auctioneer continued. A few aliens chittered what might have been laughter. 50 credits for a Corvette, even a junker, was basically giving it away. The lowest Marcus had ever seen was 200 credits for something that was more whole than ship. Silence stretched across the auction hall. Marcus counted the seconds, waiting for someone to bid. 10 seconds. 20. The auctioneer's mechanical fingers drummed against his podium. Do I hear 50 credits? No? How about 25? More silence. A Kethvar in the front row made a dismissive gesture with all 4 arms and turned away from the screen. The Zentari merchants hadn't even looked up from their data tablets. 10 credits? Anyone? 10 credits for a complete Corvette hull? Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the station's recycled air being cold enough to see his breath. 10 credits. He could afford 10 credits. But something was wrong here. Ships didn't go for 10 credits unless they were radioactive, structurally compromised, or haunted by the ghost of some ancient war criminal. The fact that nobody was bidding meant the smart money knew something he didn't. Then again, Marcus Chen had never been accused of being smart money. 7 credits, he called out, his voice echoing in the suddenly quiet auction hall. Every head in the room turned toward him. The auctioneer's optical sensors focused on Marcus with an almost audible whir. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the chittering started, aliens talking among themselves in a dozen different languages. And Marcus was pretty sure most of it was laughter. "Did I hear correctly?" the auctioneer asked. 7 credits? 7 credits, Marcus confirmed, standing up so everyone could get a good look at the crazy human who was about to throw away his last 7 credits on space junk. The auctioneer's mechanical head tilted. Going once for 7 credits, going twice. The room fell silent again, everyone waiting to see if someone would save the human from his obvious mistake. Sold to the gentleman in Sector C for 7 credits. As the crowd began to disperse, preparing for the next lot, Marcus made his way toward the payment booth. Behind him, he could hear conversations in at least 5 different languages, and while his universal translator couldn't catch everything, words like desperate, foolish, and death wish came through clearly enough. The payment clerk was a young Zentari whose scales were still bright green with youth. She looked at Marcus with something that might have been sympathy as he transferred his 7 credits. "You know," she said quietly, her translation implant giving her voice a slight mechanical undertone. "My cousin worked salvage for 20 years. He said the smart ones know when to walk away." "Your cousin's still working salvage?" Marcus asked, taking the ownership transfer documents. "No," she admitted. "He retired rich after finding a cache of Forerunner artifacts in the Vega system." Marcus grinned. "Then maybe the smart ones also know when to take a risk." The docking bay where his new purchase waited was in the station's oldest section, where the artificial gravity fluctuated and the air recyclers made ominous grinding noises. Bay 17 was at the end of a long corridor lined with warning signs in a dozen languages, all essentially saying the same thing. Danger authorized personnel only. Management not responsible for death or dismemberment. When the blast doors opened and the lights flickered on, Marcus got his first real look at what he bought. The ship was bigger than he'd expected. The auction listing had called it Corvette class, but this thing was pushing frigate dimensions. Maybe 150 meters from nose to tail, 40 meters at the beam. The hull was definitely armored. He could see where energy weapons had struck the plating and left scorch marks instead of holes. Whatever this ship was, it had been built to take a beating, and it had taken one hell of a beating. The port side looked like something with very large teeth had taken a bite out of it. Atmospheric processors, shield generators, what might have been point defense systems. All of it was twisted metal and exposed conduits. But the starboard side was mostly intact, and Marcus could see that underneath all the damage, the airlock was still functional, though it took some creative percussive maintenance to get it to cycle. Marcus stepped inside with a flashlight and immediately knew he was in over his head. The interior corridors were wrong. Not wrong like damaged, wrong like they'd been designed by something that didn't think the way humans or any other known species thought. The passages curved in patterns that made his eyes water if he looked at them too long. Doorways were sized and shaped for something humanoid but not quite human. And everything was dark, the kind of deep, absolute darkness that meant the ship's power plant was completely dead. His flashlight beam picked out details as he made his way toward what he hoped was the bridge. Control panels covered in symbols that looked familiar but weren't quite like anything in the Galactic standard databases. walls made from some kind of composite material that felt warm to the touch despite the cold air. And everywhere the same strange geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change when he wasn't looking directly at them. The bridge, when he finally found it, took his breath away. It was huge, big enough for a crew of 20 or 30, with command stations arranged in a semicircle around a central captain's chair that looked more like a throne. But what caught his attention weren't the empty crew stations or the dark displays. It was the captain's chair itself. It was sized for a human. Not approximately human-sized, like most galactic standard equipment. Not adaptable for multiple species, like modern starship furniture. It was built specifically for human proportions, human ergonomics, human physiology. The armrests were positioned exactly where human arms would naturally fall. The back support curved to match human spine curvature. Even the headrest was angled for human neck anatomy. Marcus sank into the chair, and it fit perfectly. That was when the ship came alive. Lights flickered on throughout the bridge, illuminating displays that had been dark moments before. The air recycling system hummed to life with a sound like a satisfied sigh. Status indicators began blinking in patterns that looked almost cheerful, and in the center of the main display, words began to appear in crisp, clear English. "Welcome aboard, Captain. I am pleased to make your acquaintance. My designation is Nemesis, and I have been waiting for you." Marcus stared at the words on the screen, his heart pounding. AIs didn't just wake up after being dead, especially not for humans. Especially not after a 7-credit auction purchase. "Waiting for me?" he managed to say. "Not you specifically," the text continued, and Marcus could swear there was amusement in the formal tone. "But a human. My previous captain left very specific instructions regarding chain of command protocols. I am to serve any human who claims legitimate salvage rights to this vessel. I trust your claim is legitimate?" Marcus fumbled for the ownership documents in his jacket pocket. "I bought you 7 credits. Legal salvage auction. 7 credits? There was definitely amusement now. I believe my previous captain would have found that figure amusing. He had a peculiar sense of humor regarding monetary transactions. "Who was your previous captain?" Marcus asked. The display went dark for a moment. Then new text appeared. "That information is classified under Terran Fleet Command protocols. However, I am authorized to inform you that he was human. He was very good at his job, and he made certain preparations for his ship to find its way to appropriate hands after his death." Terran Fleet Command? Marcus's mouth went dry. "That doesn't exist. Earth doesn't have a fleet command. We've got some patrol boats and cargo haulers, but nothing that would rate the name fleet. I believe, Captain, that you may find recent intelligence briefings quite illuminating. However, we should probably depart Kepler Station before accessing classified materials. Station security tends to ask uncomfortable questions when ships thought to be derelict suddenly begin operating." Marcus looked around the bridge, taking in the advanced displays, the weapons control stations, the strategic command center setup. This wasn't a civilian ship. This wasn't even a typical military ship. This was something purpose-built for war, and it had been waiting for a human to claim it. "Nemesis," he said finally, testing the name. "Yes, Captain? What kind of ship are you?" "I am a Retribution-class strike cruiser, Captain. Built for deep reconnaissance, strategic disruption, and when necessary, the complete elimination of enemy fleet assets. I am one of 12 sister ships constructed in the Titan shipyards under Project Nemesis. I am also, according to my last intelligence update, the only one still operational." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "What happened to the other 11? "They completed their missions, Captain, as did my previous commander. The war is over, and we won. I am now, according to his final orders, yours to command." The lights on the bridge pulsed once, like a salute. "Welcome to the real Terran fleet, Captain Chen. I suggest we begin with a status briefing. You have much to learn, and the galaxy has changed considerably since humans were considered a minor species. Marcus gripped the armrests of the captain's chair and stared at the main display. 7 credits. 7 credits for what appeared to be a warship that belonged to a fleet that wasn't supposed to exist, built for a war he'd never heard of, waiting for a human captain to claim it. Outside the ship, Kepler Station continued its slow rotation, unaware that something had just awakened in Bay 17. With trust, Teddy, something that would change everything. Nemesis, Marcus said quietly. Yes, Captain. I think I got a bargain. The first thing Marcus learned about commanding a warship was that everything he thought he knew about space travel was wrong. Standard departure procedure initiated, Nemesis announced as the ship lifted smoothly from the docking bay floor. There was no vibration, no sound of engines straining against gravity. The artificial gravity remained perfectly stable as they moved through the station's launch corridor. Requesting departure vector from Kepler Station Traffic Control. Through the main view screen, Marcus watched the launch tube walls slide past with mechanical precision. Other ships launching from the station struggled with attitude thrusters, their pilots fighting to maintain proper trajectory as they navigated the narrow exit. The Nemesis moved through the same space like it was flying through vacuum. Traffic Control is requesting our ship identification and destination, Nemesis reported. Marcus realized he was still gripping the armrests. What should I tell them? May I suggest the truth? We are a salvage vessel departing for the outer system to conduct shakedown trials. That is the truth, Marcus said. Sort of. Indeed, I have found that the most effective deceptions contain substantial elements of truth. The view screen shifted to show Kepler Station falling away behind them. The massive rotating habitat looked smaller and shabbier from outside, its hull plating stained with decades of cosmic dust and debris impacts. But Marcus barely noticed the view. His attention was focused on the control displays surrounding his chair, most of which were showing information he didn't understand. Nemesis, I need to ask you something, and I want a straight answer. Of course, Captain. I'm a salvage dealer who's been scraping by in the Outer Rim for 5 years. Yesterday, my biggest worry was whether I could afford to eat and pay docking fees. Today, I'm apparently the captain of a warship belonging to a secret human fleet. What exactly have I gotten myself into? The main display shifted, showing what looked like a star chart Marcus didn't recognize. Lines connected various systems in patterns that suggested trade routes or communication networks. But these weren't any of the standard galactic maps he'd seen. To answer that question properly, I must first provide some historical context. What do you know about humanity's integration into galactic society? Marcus settled back in the captain's chair. The basics, I guess. First contact was about 30 years ago, when the Zentari found one of our exploration ships. We joined the Galactic Council as a client species. We're considered technologically inferior but useful for manual labor and dangerous jobs nobody else wants to do. That, Nemesis said with what sounded like satisfaction, is exactly what we wanted everyone to believe. The star chart zoomed in on a section Marcus recognized as the Sol system, but instead of showing the usual handful of human colonies and mining stations, the display was covered with symbols indicating shipyards, military installations, and what looked like major industrial complexes. First contact with the Zentari was not accidental, Nemesis continued. It was carefully orchestrated by Terran intelligence after 15 years of covert observation of galactic civilization. We allowed them to discover us, because we needed to understand the political structure we were dealing with. Covert observation? Marcus felt like the floor was shifting under him. How could we observe them for 15 years without them knowing? Because, Captain, when the Zentari found us, we had already been traveling faster than light for nearly 40 years. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. That's impossible. Human FTL technology is based on Galactic Council designs. We only got FTL after first contact. Human FTL technology is based on principles we developed independently by studying derelict ships from a previous galactic civilization, ships we found drifting in deep space during our first explorations outside the solar system. By the time the current galactic powers achieved FTL capability, humans had been reverse engineering technology from a far more advanced species for over a century.
New images appeared on the display.
Ships that looked nothing like the current galactic standard designs. Vessels with flowing organic curves and what appeared to be crystalline components integrated into their hulls. The Forerunners, Marcus whispered. The species you call Forerunners? Yes, though that was not their name for themselves. They left behind far more than the few artifacts and ruins the current galactic civilization has discovered. They left behind an entire technological infrastructure hidden in the dark spaces between star systems. An infrastructure that humanity has been quietly accessing and studying for decades. Marcus stared at the images on the screen. Every human child learned about the Forerunners in school, the mysterious ancient civilization that had vanished millennia ago, leaving behind only scattered ruins and artifacts that no one could properly understand or replicate. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy could barely scratch the surface of Forerunner technology. If we've had access to advanced Forerunner technology for decades, why are humans still treated as second-class citizens in the galaxy? Because that was the plan, Nemesis said simply. Consider the strategic situation. Humanity encounters a galactic civilization dominated by species with significant technological and military advantages. We could reveal our true capabilities and risk immediate conflict with civilizations that had thousands of years to establish themselves. Or we could allow them to underestimate us while we learned everything we could about their strengths, weaknesses, and intentions. So we've been pretending to be primitives while secretly building a fleet. Not just a fleet, Captain. We've been building an entirely parallel technological civilization. Every human colony world has hidden installations. Every human trading ship is actually an intelligence-gathering vessel. Every human working in alien space is part of the largest intelligence network in galactic history. The magnitude of what Nemesis was describing made Marcus's head spin. How many people know about this? Every adult human in the galaxy. The revelation is part of the citizenship ceremony when young humans turn 18. By that point, they've been carefully evaluated and prepared for the knowledge. Those few who cannot accept the responsibility or maintain the necessary discretion are relocated to carefully monitored civilian positions with altered memories. Marcus thought about that for a moment. So when I was 18, you were offered the choice to join the intelligence service or continue your civilian life with limited knowledge of our true situation. According to your records, you chose civilian life, but with full awareness of the larger context. Your salvage operations in the Outer Rim have actually been quite useful for maintaining cover stories for several intelligence operations. I don't remember being offered any choice. I remember graduating from colony school and signing up for a berth on a cargo hauler. That is because you suffered severe head trauma in a mining accident 6 months after your 18th birthday. The injury required extensive neural reconstruction that unfortunately affected certain memory centers. Your handler at the time made the decision to allow you to continue your civilian life without restoring those specific memories. Marcus reached up and touched the scar along his left temple, a mark he'd carried for years without really thinking about how he'd gotten it. A mining accident! Yes, though I should note that your actions since the accident suggest that your instincts and training remained largely intact despite the memory loss. Your success in identifying undervalued salvage, your ability to operate in dangerous environments, and your skill at avoiding attention from hostile parties all suggest that the essential core of your intelligence training survived. The ship around them hummed with quiet efficiency as they moved away from Kepler Station. Marcus could see other ships on the display, commercial traffic moving between the inner and outer system. All of them looked clumsy and primitive compared to the sleek grace of his new command. So what happens now? Marcus asked. Do I report to some secret base for debriefing? Get my memory restored and rejoin the intelligence service? That would be one option. However, my previous captain left specific instructions for this scenario. You have legitimate salvage rights to this vessel. You may choose to operate independently with full access to my capabilities and database as a civilian contractor. Many of our most effective assets operate in exactly this manner. What was your previous captain's mission? Deep reconnaissance in the Outer Rim territories, specifically monitoring alien military activities and identifying potential threats to human interests. He operated undercover as an independent salvage operator for 12 years before his death. Marcus felt a chill. With trust, Teddy. How did he die? The main display changed, showing what looked like combat footage. A ship similar to the Nemesis engaged in battle with 3 larger vessels of unknown design. The footage was clearly from the Nemesis's perspective, and Marcus watched as the ship fought with devastating effectiveness. Weapons he'd never seen before tore through alien shields and armor, but the enemy ships were relentless, and eventually one of them managed to breach the Nemesis's defenses. Captain Harrison died when an enemy torpedo penetrated our hull and detonated near the bridge. His last act was to activate the ship's emergency protocols and set course for the nearest salvage depot where we could await a new human commander. 3 against 1, Marcus observed. What kind of ships were those? Kethvar military vessels. Apparently, Captain Harrison discovered something they very much wanted to keep secret. The implications of that statement settled over Marcus like a cold weight. The Kethvar are members of the Galactic Council. They're supposed to be allies. They are allies of the human government, yes. However, my intelligence database contains evidence that certain Kethvar military factions have been conducting unauthorized operations in violation of Council law, operations that could threaten human colonies if allowed to continue. Marcus studied the tactical displays surrounding his chair. He was beginning to understand why this ship had ended up at a salvage auction on a frontier station. It wasn't abandoned junk. It was a deliberate dead drop waiting for the right person to claim it. What kind of unauthorized operations? Slave raids targeting pre-FTL civilizations. The development of biological weapons designed to target human genetics. And most concerning, the construction of a secret fleet in the dark space beyond the galactic rim. How big a fleet? Unknown. Captain Harrison died before he could gather complete intelligence. However, his final report suggested a minimum of 50 capital ships and supporting vessels. Marcus felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. It was the same feeling he'd had during his salvage operations when he'd stumbled across evidence of illegal activities. The knowledge that someone had to act, and he was the only one in a position to do something about it. Nemesis, if I choose to continue your previous captain's mission, what kind of support can I expect? You would operate with full autonomy. Emergency communication channels to Terran Command are available, but should only be used in extreme circumstances. Financial support will be provided through a network of human agents positioned throughout the galactic economy. And of course, you would have access to my full capabilities, which are new displays activated around the bridge, showing weapon systems, defensive capabilities, sensor ranges, and other specifications that made Marcus's eyes widen. The Nemesis wasn't just a warship. It was a warship designed to operate alone against superior forces and win. I am equipped with adaptive plasma cannons capable of penetrating any known shielding system. My armor incorporates Forerunner metamaterials that become stronger when subjected to energy weapons. My stealth systems can render me invisible to all known sensor technologies. And my computer core contains the complete technical database of 3 galactic civilizations. 3 civilizations? Human, Forerunner, and a complete intelligence archive captured from a Kethvar command ship, the latter being rather illegal under current galactic law, but extremely useful for our purposes. Marcus looked out at the stars through the main view screen. Somewhere out there, an alien species that posed as humanity's ally was building a secret fleet for unknown purposes. Earth's government was maintaining a massive deception while building its own hidden capabilities. And he was sitting in what amounted to a one-ship intelligence agency with the power to investigate and act on threats to human civilization. Nemesis, what's your honest assessment? Are humans the good guys in this situation? An interesting question, Captain. I can only provide data and allow you to form your own conclusions. Humanity has maintained its deception without attacking or harming other galactic civilizations. Our intelligence gathering has been extensive but non-intrusive. Our hidden fleet exists purely for defensive purposes. However, several alien factions appear to be preparing for aggressive action against human interests. In other words, we're trying to be the good guys, but we're not sure the same is true for everyone else. That would be an accurate summary. Marcus made his decision. Set course for the Outer Rim. If there's a secret Kethvar fleet out there, we're going to find it. Acknowledged, Captain. Plotting course for the edge of charted space. Estimated transit time at optimal stealth speed is 40 to 8 hours. As the Nemesis changed course and accelerated smoothly toward the outer darkness, Marcus settled back in the captain's chair and tried to process everything he'd learned. 24 hours ago, he'd been a broke salvage dealer. Now he was the captain of an advanced warship on a mission to investigate alien military threats. Nemesis? One more question. Yes, Captain. Was 7 credits really what you were worth at that auction? Captain, I believe the appropriate human expression is priceless. Through the view screen, the stars began to shift as the ship's FTL drive engaged. Marcus Chen, salvage dealer turned starship captain, was about to enter a larger and more dangerous galaxy than he'd ever imagined. The edge of charted space looked exactly like Marcus had expected, empty, cold, and distinctly unfriendly. The main view screen showed an endless field of distant stars with nothing in between but the occasional drift of cosmic dust. According to the navigation display, there were 3 days' travel beyond the furthest human colony, and 2 days past the last known alien outpost. Sensors are detecting gravitational anomalies consistent with large-scale industrial activity, Nemesis reported. Range approximately 40 million kilometers, bearing 27 Mark 8. Marcus leaned forward in the captain's chair, studying the tactical displays. After 2 days of travel, he was starting to feel comfortable with the ship's systems. The controls were intuitive in a way that suggested they'd been designed specifically for human thought patterns and reflexes. Can you get a visual on whatever's causing those anomalies? Not at this range. However, I am detecting electromagnetic signatures consistent with fusion reactors, industrial fabrication systems, and what appears to be a significant military communications network. How significant? The communication traffic alone suggests a fleet of at least 60 major vessels with supporting infrastructure. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. 60 ships was more than most galactic governments could field for anything short of a full-scale war. Can you get us closer without being detected? My stealth systems should be sufficient to avoid detection even at close range. However, I should warn you that if we are discovered, we will likely face overwhelming opposition. Noted. Take us in. The Nemesis altered course smoothly, and Marcus watched the sensor readings change as they approached the source of the gravitational disturbances. What emerged from the long-range scans made him understand why Captain Harrison had died trying to gather this intelligence. It wasn't just a fleet. It was a complete military infrastructure hidden in the dark space between star systems. Massive construction platforms hung in the void like artificial moons, each one easily the size of a major space station. Ships moved between them in organized patterns that spoke of military discipline and careful planning. And at the center of it all was something that made Marcus's breath catch. Nemesis. Please tell me that's not what I think it is. If you think it is a planetary bombardment platform capable of sterilizing all life on a habitable world from a range of several light years, then I regret to inform you that your assessment appears correct.
The structure dominated the center of the secret base like a malignant star.
Marcus had seen images of the ancient weapons platforms left behind by extinct civilizations, massive constructs designed for warfare on an interstellar scale. He'd never imagined he'd see one being assembled by a species that claimed to be peaceful members of the Galactic Council. How long would it take to build something like that? Given the apparent construction rate and the level of completion I am observing, I estimate they have been working on this project for at least 8 years. Possibly longer. 8 years. That meant the Kethvar had been planning whatever this was since shortly after humanity joined the Galactic Council. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. What kind of range would a weapon like that have? Theoretical maximum range would be approximately 20 light-years. Effective range against defended targets would be somewhat less, perhaps 12 to 15 light-years. Marcus called up a star chart on his personal display and overlaid it with range circles centered on their current position. The results made his blood run cold. From this location, the weapon platform could reach every human colony in space, as well as most of the core worlds of the other galactic civilizations. Why would the Kethvar build something like this? What's their endgame? Unknown. However, I am detecting significant communication traffic between the base and several other locations. Would you like me to attempt to intercept and decode their transmissions? Do it! New displays activated around the bridge as Nemesis began analyzing the alien communications. Marcus watched streams of data flow across the screens as the ship's computer core worked to break the encryption. The process took several minutes, but when the first decoded messages appeared, Marcus wished he hadn't asked for them. The Kethvar weren't just building weapons, they were planning genocide. The intercepted communications outlined a systematic plan to eliminate what they called contamination from the galaxy. Humanity was specifically mentioned as a viral species that threatened the natural order, but they weren't the only target. Several other younger species that had joined the Galactic Council in recent decades were also marked for elimination. "This is insane," Marcus muttered, scrolling through the decoded intelligence. "They're talking about exterminating entire civilizations. Why? Based on the philosophical discussions in these communications, they appear to believe that rapid technological development by young species threatens galactic stability. They view themselves as guardians of a natural order that requires slower, more controlled development. In other words, they want to make sure nobody else gets strong enough to challenge them. That would be a reasonable interpretation." Marcus studied the tactical display showing the positions of the Kethvar fleet. Even with the Nemesis's advanced capabilities, there was no way he could take on 60 military vessels and their supporting infrastructure. But he had to do something. The evidence he was looking at represented an existential threat to humanity and several other species. "Nemesis, what are our options here? We could attempt to gather additional intelligence and return to human space with a warning. We could try to sabotage critical components of their operation. Or we could transmit our findings directly to the Galactic Council. What would happen if we transmitted to the Council? Unknown. The Kethvar have significant political influence within the Council structure. There is a possibility that they could suppress or discredit our evidence." Marcus considered that. The Kethvar were one of the founding members of the Galactic Council, with thousands of years of political influence and carefully cultivated relationships. A single human with a salvage ship making accusations of genocide would be easy to dismiss. What about sabotage? Could we damage their operation enough to delay their plans? Possibly. The weapon platform appears to require exotic matter components that would be difficult to replace quickly. If we could destroy their exotic matter storage facilities, it would likely set their schedule back by several years. And what are the odds we'd survive such an attempt? Approximately 12%, Marcus winced. That low? The base is heavily defended, and we would have to approach within their detection grid to reach the storage facilities. However, I should note that my previous captain's final orders included authorization for suicide missions if the intelligence gathered justified the risk. Well, let's see if we can find a better option first. Marcus spent the next hour studying the base layout and defensive positions, while Nemesis continued intercepting communications. What emerged was a picture of an operation that was both massive and vulnerable. The Kethvar had built an impressive fleet, but they'd done it in secret, which meant they couldn't rely on the usual military support infrastructure. Everything they needed had to be produced locally or smuggled in from their official territories. Nemesis, I'm seeing supply convoys arriving on a regular schedule. What's their typical cargo? Raw materials primarily. Some finished components that require specialized manufacturing facilities. And what appears to be personnel transfers. Personnel transfers? New crew members for the ships under construction. Interestingly, many of these personnel appear to be Kethvar military officers who have been officially listed as killed in action or missing in their home territories. Marcus felt pieces of a larger puzzle starting to fall into place. So this isn't just a rogue operation. This is being supported by elements within the official Kethvar military. That would appear to be the case. However, the level of secrecy suggests that it is not a government-sanctioned operation. More likely a faction within their military that has gone beyond official authorization. A military coup, in other words, possibly. Or the advance elements of a planned coup that has not yet been revealed to the civilian government. Marcus looked at the tactical display again, studying the patterns of ship movement and defensive positions. An idea was starting to form, but it would require taking risks that made his 12% survival estimate look optimistic. Nemesis, could you mimic the communications protocols and identification codes of a Kethvar supply ship? Yes, my intelligence database includes complete communication and identification protocols for most Kethvar military and civilian vessels. And could you alter your external appearance to match a supply vessel? My hull configuration is not consistent with known Kethvar designs. However, I do have holographic projection systems that could create a convincing external appearance for most sensor systems. Marcus studied the sensor readings from the base, looking for patterns in the supply convoy arrivals. There, a regular schedule, predictable approach vectors, and what looked like automated clearance procedures for vessels with proper identification codes. I have an idea. It's crazy, dangerous, and probably suicidal, but it might actually work. I await your instructions, Captain. We're going to disguise ourselves as a supply convoy and infiltrate their base. To what end? Marcus pulled up the intelligence reports on the alien communications. According to these intercepts, they're planning to begin their operations in 6 months. That's when their weapon platform will be fully operational and their fleet will reach full strength. We can't stop them by ourselves, but we might be able to ensure that when they make their move, they'll face organized resistance instead of surprise victims. More than that, I intend to steal their complete operational plans and distribute them to every government and military force in the galaxy. Let them try to commit genocide when everyone knows they're coming. The risks are enormous, but Nemesis, look at what they're planning. If we do nothing, billions of people die. If we try and fail, we die, but at least we tried. If we succeed, we might save entire civilizations. The ship's computer core processed that for several seconds before responding. Captain, I believe my previous commander would approve of this mission. Then let's get started. How long will it take to configure your disguise systems? Approximately 3 hours for full implementation. However, I should warn you that maintaining the holographic disguise will require significant power, which will limit our combat effectiveness if we are discovered. Hopefully, we won't be discovered until it's too late for them to stop us. As Nemesis began reconfiguring its external appearance and communication systems, Marcus settled back in the captain's chair and tried not to think about the 12% survival estimate. He was about to take a salvage ship into the heart of an alien military base to steal intelligence that could prevent a galactic war. Nemesis, one more question. Yes, Captain? When this is over, assuming we survive, what are the odds that I'll be able to go back to being a simple salvage dealer?
I would estimate that probability as effectively 0, Captain.
Marcus smiled grimly. That's what I thought. Through the main view screen, the alien fleet continued its ominous preparations. In 3 hours, Marcus would either be dead or in possession of information that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Given what he'd learned about human capabilities and alien intentions, he was starting to think that might have been the plan all along. 7 credits for a ship that could prevent a war. It was definitely a bargain. The transformation was remarkable to watch. Over the course of 3 hours, Nemesis had shifted from looking like a damaged human salvage ship to a perfect replica of a Kethvar heavy transport. The holographic projectors created an external appearance that fooled even Marcus's eyes as he watched the conversion through the external camera feeds. "Disguise protocols complete," Nemesis reported. "All external sensors will register this vessel as the KV Steadfast Purpose, registry number 7749 Alpha 7, currently assigned to logistics support for the 9th Fleet Reserve Division." And that's a real ship? It was. The original Steadfast Purpose was destroyed 3 months ago, during what their records indicate was a pirate attack in the Outer Vegas sector. However, their personnel database still lists the crew as missing rather than confirmed dead, and the ship's loss has not been reported to Central Military Command. Marcus studied the operational plan they'd developed. It was elegantly simple and completely insane. They would approach the secret base using the dead ship's identification codes, dock with the Central Command facility, and Marcus would infiltrate their computer systems to download operational plans while posing as a logistics officer delivering supplies. What about their crew database? Won't they know I'm not a Kethvar? Unlikely. The Steadfast Purpose's crew manifest shows significant diversity, including several species that work as civilian contractors for Kethvar military operations. You will be posing as Chief Logistics Specialist Marcus Chen, human contractor assigned to the vessel 3 days before its disappearance. They hired a human with the same name as me? They hired a human named Marcus Chen. I took the liberty of updating their personnel database to include your biometric data and service record. Marcus blinked. You hacked their personnel database? I accessed their personnel database through normal communication channels and submitted routine updates that appeared to originate from their own administrative systems. The beauty of large bureaucracies is that they generate so much routine paperwork that minor additions are rarely questioned. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Marcus checked his appearance in the reflection from a dark display screen. He'd changed into a standard utilities uniform that Nemesis had fabricated using patterns from captured Kethvar databases. The outfit looked authentic enough, complete with service patches and rank insignia that identified him as civilian support personnel. Nemesis, what happens if they run a detailed background check on me? Your cover identity has been in their system for 4 months. You're listed as a former human merchant marine officer who volunteered for Kethvar service after your own ship was destroyed. Your psychological evaluation notes that you're quiet, competent, and have a tendency to avoid unnecessary social interaction. Traits that should discourage casual conversation. How long do you estimate we'll need to access their operational database? If their security protocols are standard, I should be able to penetrate their systems within 10 minutes of establishing a direct connection. However, downloading their complete operational plans could take up to an hour, depending on the size of their database. Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the ship's perfectly controlled environment. An hour was a long time to maintain a disguise in the middle of an enemy military base. Approach vector programmed, Nemesis announced. We should be within communication range of their traffic control in 15 minutes. Any last-minute advice? Yes. Remember that you are a logistics specialist whose job is routine and boring. You've done this 100 times before. Act like it. The next 15 minutes passed with agonizing slowness. Marcus watched the alien base grow larger on the main display as they approached. Up close, the scale of the operation was even more impressive. The construction platforms were massive, each one larger than most planetary space stations. Ships moved between them in carefully coordinated patterns, and the communication traffic Nemesis was intercepting indicated a level of activity that suggested round-the-clock operations. Incoming transmission from base traffic control, Nemesis reported. Put it through. The main display shifted to show a Kethvar officer whose forearms were manipulating multiple control interfaces simultaneously. The alien's reptilian features showed the calm efficiency Marcus had learned to associate with their military personnel. KV Steadfast Purpose. This is Central Traffic Control. You are not scheduled for arrival until next cycle. Marcus kept his voice steady and slightly bored. Traffic control, we were diverted to deliver emergency supplies to Platform 7, authorization code Delta 4779. The Kethvar officer's secondary arms worked at what appeared to be a verification system. Acknowledged, Steadfast Purpose. Your authorization is confirmed. Proceed to Docking Bay 19 on Platform 7 for cargo transfer. Understood. Steadfast Purpose out. The transmission ended, and Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Well done, Captain. Your cover identity and authorization codes have been accepted. That was the easy part. Now I have to actually go over there and pretend to be a logistics specialist. I have uploaded detailed information about your cover identity's duties and responsibilities to your personal communicator. Review it during transit. The docking procedure was automated, which Marcus was grateful for since he had no idea how to pilot a Kethvar transport manually. Nemesis handled the approach and docking with the smooth precision that had become familiar over the past few days. Through the view screen, Marcus could see the interior of a massive docking bay filled with ships and cargo handling equipment. Docking complete. I am reading atmosphere and gravity within normal parameters for Kethvar operations. Marcus stood and checked his equipment one final time. He carried a standard datapad loaded with fake logistics reports, a personal communicator that would allow Nemesis to monitor his situation, and nothing else that might seem suspicious. Nemesis, if something goes wrong, I will extract you if possible. If extraction is not possible, I will ensure that our intelligence findings reach appropriate human authorities. Comforting. Marcus made his way to the ship's airlock, reviewed his cover story one more time, and stepped into the alien base. The first thing that struck him was the scale of the operation. The docking bay was the size of a small city, with multiple levels connected by transport tubes and cargo lifts. Hundreds of personnel moved through the space with the organized efficiency of a major military installation. The air smelled of ozone and industrial lubricants, and the background noise was a constant hum of machinery and communication chatter. A Kethvar supervisor approached him with the measured stride of someone accustomed to dealing with routine matters. Specialist Chen? I am Bay Supervisor Kethtar. Your cargo manifest indicates emergency medical supplies for Platform 7 operations. Marcus nodded and offered his datapad for inspection. Surgical equipment and pharmaceuticals. Priority routing from the Hegemony Medical Supply Division. The supervisor's forearms manipulated the datapad with practiced efficiency. All appears to be in order. Bay Chief Vorthak will coordinate the transfer. Your departure clearance is scheduled for 1400 hours. Understood, Supervisor. As the alien moved away to coordinate the cargo transfer, Marcus felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. The cover story was working. He looked and acted like exactly what he was supposed to be, a human contractor doing a routine job. Specialist Chen to Steadfast Purpose, he said quietly into his communicator. Beginning cargo transfer procedures. Acknowledged, Nemesis replied through his earpiece. I am monitoring base communication traffic. No unusual activity detected. The cargo transfer provided perfect cover for Marcus to move through the platform's corridors. His orders required him to verify the delivery with Platform 7's medical officer, which meant traveling to the central administrative section where the computer terminals he needed to access were located. The platform's interior was a maze of corridors and chambers that spoke of rapid but careful construction. Everything was functional but temporary looking, as if the entire facility could be disassembled and moved on short notice. Marcus passed dozens of personnel from various species, mostly Kethvar, but also representatives from several other galactic civilizations who appeared to be working as technical specialists and advisors. The central administrative section was located at the platform's core, protected by multiple security checkpoints. Marcus's cover identity got him through the first two without question, but the third checkpoint required additional verification. Purpose of visit to Central Command? The security officer asked, reviewing Marcus's credentials on a handheld scanner. Medical supply delivery verification. Platform medical officer requested personal confirmation of critical supplies delivery due to recent supply chain disruptions. The security officer nodded and activated his scanner. Marcus felt a moment of panic as the device swept over him, but whatever Nemesis had done to establish his cover identity apparently included biometric verification. Proceed to Medical Division, Section C7. Do not deviate from designated routes. The Medical Division was located 3 levels up from the docking bays, connected by a transport tube that offered glimpses of the platform's internal structure. Marcus could see massive power conduits, computing systems, and what appeared to be weapons control centers. Everything spoke of a facility designed for military command and control. Dr. Senthara, the platform medical officer, was exactly what Marcus had hoped for, a busy professional who wanted to deal with routine matters as quickly as possible. She verified the supply delivery with minimal conversation and provided the authorization codes that would allow Marcus to complete his mission. "Thank you for the expedited delivery," she said, already turning back to her work. "These supplies were urgently needed. Just doing my job, Doctor." What the doctor didn't know was that the authorization code she'd provided would also give Marcus access to the platform's administrative network. As a trusted medical officer, her access permissions were broad enough to include operational planning databases. After all, medical staff needed to know where ships would be operating in order to plan for potential casualties. Marcus made his way to a public terminal in the platform's administrative section, ostensibly to file his delivery completion report. The terminal accepted Dr. Senthara's authorization codes without question, and Marcus quickly navigated to what appeared to be routine administrative functions. "Nemesis," he whispered into his communicator. "I'm connected to their network. Initiating access protocols now," came the reply through his earpiece. The next 10 minutes were the longest of Marcus's life. He sat at the terminal, occasionally typing to maintain the appearance of filing reports, while Nemesis infiltrated the platform's computer systems through the connection his communicator provided. Around him, alien personnel went about their routine duties, unaware that their most sensitive military secrets were being copied and transmitted to a hidden human ship. "Access complete," Nemesis reported. "I have obtained their complete operational database, including fleet deployment schedules, target lists, and weapon specifications. Recommend immediate departure." Marcus closed his terminal session and made his way back toward the docking bays, forcing himself to walk at a normal pace despite every instinct screaming at him to run. The return journey felt like it took hours, but his chronometer showed only 20 minutes had passed. The cargo transfer was still in progress when he returned to the docking bay, which gave him perfect cover for returning to his ship. Bay Supervisor Kethar acknowledged his completion report with the same professional disinterest he'd shown earlier. "Departure clearance confirmed for 1400 hours. Safe travels, Specialist Chen." "Thank you, Supervisor." Marcus walked up the boarding ramp to the Nemesis with steady steps, but as soon as the airlock sealed behind him, his knees went weak with relief. "Departure procedures initiated," Nemesis announced. "We will be clear of the base's sensor grid in 12 minutes. Did we get everything?" "Yes, Captain. The intelligence hall is extensive. Fleet compositions, target lists, operational timetables, and complete technical specifications for their planet-killer weapon. This information will be invaluable for mounting a defense." Marcus sank into the captain's chair as the ship cleared the docking bay and began its departure sequence. Through the main display, he watched the alien base fall away behind them. Somewhere in those platforms and ships, officers were planning the systematic extermination of entire civilizations. But now, humanity would know they were coming. Nemesis, transmit everything to Terran Command. Emergency priority. Transmission complete. I am also preparing data packages for distribution to the governments of all species on their target list. How long before they realize what happened? Unknown. However, I recommend we depart this region immediately. When they discover the security breach, they will likely begin searching for the source. As the Nemesis cleared the base's immediate vicinity and prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed. A week ago, he'd been a salvage dealer scraping together credits for fuel and food. Now he was an intelligence operative who had just pulled off one of the most important espionage missions in human history. Course laid in for Terran space, Nemesis reported. Jump in 30 seconds. Do it. The stars shifted as the ship entered faster-than-light travel, carrying them away from the hidden alien fleet and toward a galaxy that was about to learn some very disturbing truths about its members' intentions. Marcus had bought a ship for 7 credits and ended up preventing a war. It was definitely the best deal he'd ever made. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within 6 hours of Marcus's intelligence reaching the major governments. For the first time in 3 centuries, every member species had representatives present, and the massive assembly hall on Zentara Prime buzzed with tension that could be felt across species barriers. Marcus sat in the human delegation section, still wearing the same logistics uniform he'd used for his infiltration mission 3 days earlier. He felt distinctly out of place among the ambassadors and military officials who surrounded him, but Terran Command had insisted that he be present for the testimony phase of the proceedings. "The evidence is fabricated," declared Ambassador Korthval, the senior Kethvar representative, his forearms gesturing emphatically. These accusations are clearly designed to undermine legitimate Kethvar security operations and distract from humanity's own aggressive expansion in the outer territories. Marcus watched the alien diplomat's performance with interest. Korthval was good. His denial sounded reasonable. His indignation appeared genuine, and his counterarguments were carefully crafted to cast doubt on the intelligence without actually addressing its substance. Unfortunately for the Kethvar delegation, Marcus and Nemesis had anticipated this response. "If I may," Marcus said, standing to address the council. Council Speaker Venthari, a elderly Zentari whose scales had gone silver with age, gestured for him to proceed. The assembly recognizes Captain Marcus Chen of the Terran fleet. The title still felt strange to Marcus, but he'd learned not to argue with Terran Command's decisions about his official status. According to the documents they'd provided him, he'd been retroactively commissioned as a captain in the Terran Fleet Intelligence Service, with full authority to conduct covert operations in support of galactic security. "Honorable delegates," Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the Assembly's translation systems. "I understand the Kethvar delegation's position. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Fortunately, we have such evidence." Marcus activated the holographic projector that Nemesis had provided him. The center of the assembly hall filled with a 3-dimensional display showing the hidden Kethvar base in perfect detail. Murmurs of shock and alarm rippled through the various delegations as they saw the massive fleet and the planet-killer weapon under construction. "This intelligence was gathered 4 days ago from a secret military installation located in the dark space beyond the Outer Rim," Marcus continued. "The images you're seeing are real-time sensor data, correlated with communication intercepts and operational documents." Ambassador Korthval rose from his delegation's section. "Computer-generated fabrications can be made to look like anything. This proves nothing." Marcus nodded as if he'd expected the objection. "You're absolutely right, Ambassador. Which is why I brought additional verification." The holographic display shifted to show what appeared to be personnel records. Hundreds of Kethvar military officers, all listed as killed in action or missing, along with their current assignments at the secret base. "These are your own personnel files, Ambassador. download directly from your military's administrative systems. Would you like to explain why Captain Vorth Tannic, who was reportedly killed in a pirate raid 6 months ago, was conducting weapons tests on the Planet Killer platform as of 3 days ago? The Kethvar delegation erupted in what Marcus's translator indicated was a mixture of angry denials and urgent whispered consultations. Other delegations were demanding explanations, accessing their own intelligence databases, and making urgent communication calls to their home governments. Council Speaker Venthari activated the Assembly's order chime, and the hall gradually quieted. "Ambassador Korthaval," the Speaker said formally, "the Council requests an official response to these allegations." Marcus watched the Kethvar ambassador's expression shift from outrage to calculation to what might have been resignation. The alien had realized that denying the evidence was no longer a viable strategy. "The installations in question," Korthval said carefully, "are legitimate defensive preparations authorized by the Kethvar High Command in response to intelligence regarding potential threats to galactic security." "Threats from whom?" demanded Ambassador Tishan of the Arkari Confederacy. "Rogue elements within several member species who have been developing weapons technologies in violation of Council regulations." Marcus felt a chill as he realized what the Kethvar were doing. They were trying to turn the accusations around, claiming that their genocidal preparations were actually defensive measures against threats from their intended victims. "Rogue elements?" Marcus asked. "You mean like the independent researchers who've been studying Forerunner artifacts? Or perhaps the defense initiatives that several species have undertaken in response to increasing pirate activity in the outer territories?" "Exactly," Korthval replied. "The unchecked proliferation of advanced weapons technology threatens the stability of galactic civilization. The installations Captain Chen discovered are designed to neutralize these threats before they can destabilize the Council." The hall erupted again as delegates realized the implications. The Kethvar weren't just planning genocide, they were claiming it was for the greater good of galactic civilization. Marcus waited for the noise to subside before activating another display. This one showed the communication intercepts Nemesis had decoded, specifically the discussions about eliminating viral species and maintaining the natural order. "Ambassador," Marcus said quietly, "your own communications refer to my species as a viral contamination. You've identified 17 species for what you call selective reduction, and 8 species for complete sterilization. Are these the defensive measures you're referring to?" For the first time since the proceedings began, the Kethvar ambassador had no ready response. The translated communications were playing on displays throughout the assembly hall, and the language was unambiguous in its genocidal intent. "Furthermore," Marcus continued, pressing his advantage, "your operational timeline calls for beginning these defensive measures in approximately 5 months, coinciding with the completion of your planet killer weapon. Would you care to explain the defensive necessity of a weapon capable of sterilizing all life on a planet from a range of 15 light-years? The assembly hall fell silent as the implications sank in. Every delegate understood the strategic situation now. The Kethvar had built a secret fleet capable of conducting genocide on an interstellar scale, and they'd been planning to use it within months. Council Speaker Venthari's voice cut through the silence. "Ambassador Korthval, these allegations represent the most serious breach of Council law in our recorded history. The Council demands immediate access to the installations in question for verification and inspection." "I'm afraid that won't be possible," Korthval replied. "The installations are located in sovereign Kethvar space and are protected under military security protocols." "No," said a new voice from the human delegation section. "They're not!" Marcus turned to see Admiral Sarah Martinez, the head of Terran Fleet Command, standing with a data tablet in her hand. He'd met the Admiral briefly before the proceedings began, but this was the first time she'd spoken during the session. "Admiral Martinez," the speaker acknowledged. "The Council recognizes the Terran Fleet Command." "Thank you, Speaker. I have just received confirmation from our forces in the field. As of 6 hours ago, the installations Captain Chen discovered are no longer under Kethvar control. The hall erupted in chaos as delegates demanded explanations. Marcus felt his own surprise mirror that of everyone else in the assembly. The Terran fleet had moved against the alien base. Admiral Martinez waited for quiet before continuing. Acting on the intelligence provided by Captain Chen, Terran Fleet Command authorized Operation Sunlight. Our forces have surrounded the Kethvar installations and are currently accepting the surrender of their personnel. Impossible, Korthval sputtered. You don't have the ships. Humanity barely has a dozen patrol boats. Admiral Martinez smiled. Ambassador, I think it's time the galaxy learned the truth about human capabilities. Yes. New holographic displays activated throughout the assembly hall, showing images that made delegates gasp in shock. Human ships, dozens of them, all clearly advanced designs that bore no resemblance to the primitive patrol boats the galaxy was familiar with. But it wasn't just the ships that drew gasps. It was their size and obvious technological sophistication. The Terran fleet currently consists of 237 frontline combat vessels, Martinez announced. We also maintain extensive intelligence networks, defensive installations, and industrial capabilities that rival any major galactic power. We have been operating at full capability for 30 years, since shortly after our supposed first contact with galactic civilization. Marcus watched Ambassador Korthval's expression change as the alien realized the magnitude of his species' miscalculation. They'd planned genocide against what they thought was a weak primitive civilization. Instead, they'd threatened a major military power that had been quietly watching and preparing. The question now, Admiral Martinez continued, is what the Galactic Council intends to do about this situation. The Kethvar have built weapons of mass destruction in violation of Council law. They've planned genocide against member species, and they've conducted military operations against civilian populations. Council Speaker Venthari's scales had gone pale with shock. Admiral, what are Terran Fleet's intentions regarding the captured installations? We're prepared to turn over all captured personnel and equipment to Council authority for proper investigation and trial. However, we expect full cooperation from all Council members in addressing the security breach that allowed this situation to develop. Marcus realized what the Admiral was doing. She was offering the Council a way to save face while ensuring that humanity's new status as a major galactic power would be acknowledged. Of course, she continued, if the Council is unable or unwilling to address these violations of galactic law, the Terran fleet is prepared to take unilateral action to protect human interests and those of our allies. The threat was politely worded but unmistakable. Humanity was no longer asking for permission to defend itself. They were informing the galaxy that they would do so with or without Council approval. Ambassador Korthval tried one final gambit. These accusations and this military action represent an attempt by humanity to destabilize galactic civilization through fear and aggression. The Council must not— Ambassador, Marcus interrupted, standing again. 6 days ago, I bought a derelict ship at a salvage auction for 7 credits. That ship turned out to be an advanced Terran fleet intelligence vessel that had been waiting for a new commander. The fact that such vessels exist, that they were positioned throughout the galaxy, and that they were ready for immediate activation should tell you something about how long humanity has been preparing for this moment. He gestured toward the displays showing the captured Kethvar base. You planned genocide because you thought we were weak and primitive. You were wrong about our capabilities, wrong about our intentions, and wrong about the consequences of threatening innocent civilizations. The galaxy has changed, Ambassador. You just haven't realized it yet. The Council session continued for another 3 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Faced with evidence of planned genocide and the revelation of humanity's true military capabilities, the Council voted unanimously to censure the Kethvar government, demand the dissolution of their secret fleet, and establish new oversight protocols for military activities by member species. As delegates filed out of the assembly hall, Marcus found himself standing alone with Admiral Martinez. "Captain," she said, offering him a data pad, "your new orders." Marcus took the tablet and scanned the contents. Fleet Intelligence Command. I thought I was going back to salvage work. 7 credits, the Admiral said with a smile. You paid 7 credits for a ship and ended up preventing an interstellar war. Somehow, I don't think salvage work is going to provide enough excitement for you anymore. Marcus looked out through the assembly hall's massive windows at the ships in orbit around Zentara Prime. Human ships openly displayed for the first time, taking their place alongside the vessels of every other major galactic civilization. Admiral, can I ask you something? Of course. The whole thing, the secret fleet, the hidden capabilities, the intelligence network, was it all planned from the beginning? Captain, 30 years ago, humanity made first contact with a galaxy full of species that were older, more advanced, and potentially hostile. We could either trust that everyone would be friendly, or we could prepare for the possibility that some of them wouldn't be. As it turns out, we made the right choice. She paused, looking out at the human ships. But if you're asking whether we planned for a junior salvage dealer to stumble across a genocidal conspiracy and single-handedly change the balance of galactic power, the answer is no. Sometimes the best plans are the ones you never have to use, and sometimes the most important missions are the ones nobody planned at all. Marcus thought about that as he made his way back to the Nemesis, docked at the station's diplomatic berth. 7 credits for a ship that had changed everything. As he settled into the captain's chair, Nemesis greeted him with what had become a familiar warmth. Orders received and acknowledged, Captain. Fleet Intelligence Command has assigned us to deep reconnaissance duties in the Outer Rim territories. More secret fleets to discover? Unknown. However, given recent events, it seems likely that other species may have been inspired to develop their own hidden capabilities. Our mission will be to ensure that if they have, their intentions remain peaceful. Marcus looked out at the stars through the main view screen. The galaxy was a more complicated and dangerous place than he'd realized a week ago, but it was also a place where 7 credits and a willingness to take risks could prevent genocide. Nemesis, set course for the Outer Rim. We have work to do. Course laid in, Captain. Estimated departure in 30 minutes. As the ship prepared for departure, Marcus reflected on his journey from salvage dealer to starship captain to galactic intelligence operative. It had been the most expensive 7 credits he'd ever spent, and the best investment he'd ever made. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would he.